This is Breaking Down Security, and I am Brian Brake. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brian, Miss Amanda, and our special guest host this week, Hector Monseeger for Breaking Down Security.
Hello.
Hey.
Yeah, we changed the format up a little bit because Mr. Betcher decided to go on vacation. So I was like, we need a third, because we've gotten used to it having Miss Amanda on. She's the noob in the group, but she's quickly becoming part of the family. So,
yay!
Yeah. So, Hector, for those people who've not heard about your exploits, you've started working at Rhino Security within the last year or so?
No, it's about 2 years.
2 years. Oh, that's right.
Nice.
That's right. When we had you on the last time, we couldn't say who you worked for, so that changed.
Yeah.
No, that's
cool. Fortunately, but now we're going into the second year, and so far so good. I've become the director of assessment services for Rhino, and it's just been fun.
Very cool. Very cool. So we wanted to have you on and find out how you're doing, and discuss a little bit about some research that are you doing this research yourself, or is it in coordination with Ryan over there?
Well, the research that I'm doing, you have to understand that at Rhino we're constantly doing research. We're always just busy from project to project. So at the Rhino side, I've been doing recently just focusing more on asset discovery, getting into discovering host names and subdomains by keeping a very low presence on the wire. Right, we want to try to find passive assets, or we want to find assets passively without raising any alarms. And the rest of the team, we have a fantastic guy named Dwight. Dwight is killing it. He's been doing a lot of reverse engineering work recently and focusing on AWS stuff. He had some really successful articles on that. So it's a pretty a broad mix of what we're doing right now. But on my end, it's been a lot of DNS stuff. I'm getting kind of sick of it, to be honest.
So you said asset discovery. Why can't we just use Nmap like everyone else and ping out? Is that too noisy? Well,
you have to understand that when most people are looking for subdomains, host names, they're usually resorting to DNS brute forcing, right? So Nmap, you would use Nmap for scanning, let's say an IP block, a net range. Then you could add the recursive DNS, feature that would do DNS translations or lookups during the actual scan, and that works. But if you don't have all of the IP ranges that belongs to that target, you're actually going to miss a lot of stuff. Now, what I'm trying to do is go beyond DNS brute forcing. I mean, it is a great tool. It really works, but there's enough OSINT datasets out there that really give you this information without really causing a stir. And that's pretty much what I've been working on probably the last month or so. And there's so much amazing stuff out there. Hopefully we could talk about some of these different datasets. Some of them are, very obvious, very known. People are using it already. But I think that for organizations that are growing, right, exponentially, infrastructure is growing, they're adding a whole bunch of assets every day. They're adding DNS records like crazy, hoping that some of that stuff is not discovered by using obfuscated DNS records or just weird, long host names. It's good for them to listen to this and just kind of go over these data sets and see if what I'm seeing, what people like me are seeing, are things that they could see themselves and actually, I guess, kind of fix. I mean, I don't know. So, yeah.
Okay. So you have any questions, Amanda? Feel free to jump in. Yeah, I know you work for an MSSP, so when you go in and you have a customer and do you have to discover the assets for them, or do they usually have a list?
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up.
No, please do, because I'm sure that Hector would like to hear about that.
No one ever has a list.
What?
Oh wow!
Come on.
There's been all right.
They don't
There's
give you a
been
scope.
one person that's done a good job so far. I mean, I've only been at this MSSP now for a little bit over 2 years, but asset management is the biggest struggle. I think overall, like people can, manhandle their way through firewalls, and you can deploy shit all day. Nobody keeps track of it.
And that's you. And
absolutely horrible.
If you follow the top 20 security controls, that's like the first thing you need to know, because if you don't know what you've got running, or worse, you allow people to have such lax permissions as to be able to stand up, say, their own Amazon instances, or their own Google instances, or their own whatever Google calls their VMs or whatever. Proper asset tracking is key. So Hector,
if you don't know what you have, you can't secure it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a very strong point.
Yep.
And that's kind of why I'm doing this research. So in many cases, we end up with customers that are pretty big. They have massive infrastructures. I've personally seen situations where they're acquiring companies and they don't even know what kind of assets they actually have. They'll give us a scope, like domain name and domain 2, and that's it. Do what you can. It's going to be a black box assessment. There's some little social engineering involved, yada, yada, yada. So before I even start the engagement, or at least start trying to go the next steps, one of the first steps, obviously, is the asset discovery. I want to see what's out there. I want to see what they have available. So for a long time, going back 20 years when I was a kid and I was doing this, more in the gray area, it was always about just Googling, using Google Dorks, and, DNS brute forcing, and pretty much just guessing. I mean, that's pretty much how it was back in the days. Or even like you brought up before, using Nmap and just using the DNS translation feature and just scanning an entire IP range and hoping that they have our DNS records set up. So fortunately, in 2017, we have some amazing data that's out there. Several organizations are involved in putting the information out there. And if you can organize that data and create your own data set specifically for discovery, then you're in a really good spot. I'm going to give you some examples really quickly. So when I have to discover assets for a target for one of my customers, one of the coolest things, and this is just a quick shout out to a friend of mine, Ryan Cedars at Cali Dog Security. I ran into his research by accident. He's doing the same kind of research I'm doing, but it's the opposite field. He's doing this same research for identifying phishing domains on the fly, right?
Okay.
So I suggest you guys check him out at some point. He's doing some really cool stuff. So one of the cool things that I saw him write about was the Certificate Transparency Project. And there's something like 600 gigabytes of DNS records, or rather not DNS records, but certificate data that actually contains host names and alternate host names. And what's really cool about that is that now you're going beyond the web server. We're talking about devices. We're talking about other environments that are using certificates and registering the certificates, and they're showing up in this transparency data set. So you can imagine how amazing, the kind of amazing stuff is coming out of this 600 gigabytes of data. So you can check that out at like certificate-transparency.org. And I would suggest you go to Cali Dog's blog to actually catch the articles on this exact topic. and I'm sure a lot of your listeners may have heard of Rapid7. They're working, they've obviously, Metasploit and all that. But what's cool about them is that they also released the scans.io and Sonar scans, which is basically like, they're scanning the internet all day, every day. They're really like just doing amazing stuff. They're releasing the data for free. It's just a matter of parsing it.
Do you know, is anybody pulling in that data for things like firewall blocklists or alerting or, whatever they happen to be doing today with threat intel?
Say that again?
Like the information that they're putting out there for free as far as like finding those scam domains. Is anybody using that to pull into like auto block on their firewall rules, or like depending on what anybody's doing today with their threat intel? Like, are they doing anything with that information that you know of, or is it just out there right now?
Who are we talking about? A Rapid7 or
no? The one that you mentioned that I can't.
Ryan at Cali Dog.
Yeah, and the scans.io.
Yeah, well, that's actually part of his. I would suggest you guys speak to him at some point. He's doing some great stuff. Cool. But that's exactly what he's doing. He's creating a real-time identifier, or at least he's trying to put together something like that, where it would identify rogue domains that are being registered through certificates. Mm-hmm. Amazing stuff.
On the fly, it's really hard to do.
It's really hard to do, and he's really kicking ass. I got to say that, and part of my language, by the way. But by analyzing,
not me.
I apologize, ladies and gentlemen. No, but just reading through his research, it put me on to using the certificates and the alternate names for asset discovery. It actually was fantastic stuff.
Now, what do you mean by alternate names? Is it keeping like a history? So like 1 month it's owned by some guy and it looks legit and everything, and then it's for the long game where spammers are not wanting to register domain, and then 5 seconds later are automatically using it in a phishing campaign. Would they be like holding on to that for a couple of months to make it look like it's a legit domain and then changing like the who is information? Does it keep that kind of history?
Well, it does keep a historical record of certificates. So a domain could have, I think in one of his blog posts, he actually mentioned that it was one domain that had like 100,000 separate certificates or something, some crazy number. So yeah, it definitely has a history record, but of course, we're talking about a data set of about 600 gigabytes. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of data you got to go through. You have to put together the infrastructure to query it. And you're going to end up with a lot of stuff that's going to really surprise you. Yeah. Just doing like some preliminary research into like some of the big companies. This is all passive stuff. We're not touching anybody's infrastructure here. Just doing a query on like, just one of your domains. You're going to come up with a whole bunch of different certificates and host names and alternate host names that you're going to, I would say would bug you out, and it becomes extremely helpful, especially before an engagement. Especially if it's like a black box engagement or a red team situation. They give you a very limited scope. They tell you, here's a domain, here's an IP range, and that's it. Figure out the rest. This becomes extremely helpful.
So do you deal with a lot of black box assessments? I mean, and doesn't that seem like that's kind of a waste of time for the company that's doing that, or is it that type of company that wants to be able to do that? I mean, a black box assessment seems to me like a more open dialogue between the assessor and the company would make more sense and be more useful.
Well, I think that, obviously every company is different. They want to see different results. They want to see different perspectives. When someone hits us up for like a black box assessment, like just straight up blinds, just go in as you can. I think what they want to see is a real world example of how I'm able to break into their systems. Okay. So I think it's beneficial for them because in most cases, companies that I've seen that request that service, they're usually looking at it from, okay, we already have a security team. We have a blue team inside, or we have like a little IT division dedicated to security incidents. Let's see if Hector and his colleague Dwight and anyone else at Rhino can actually break in and Can we detect them? What can we do? So that's what I'm seeing in terms of like the black box stuff. And that's where this really becomes extremely useful.
Okay. So in the notes here, you mentioned there are other data sets out there. Are you talking like employing things like Shodan, or are there other sites out there that are helpful in that manner?
Sure. I mean, there's a whole bunch of sites, and I would suggest that there's a fantastic tool out there. I mentioned it. I think I mentioned it before on conversations with Twitter or whatever. Sublister works. It works really well, and it uses their search engine scraping. Is pretty fantastic. It gives you a good list. You know, everyone from VirusTotal to Google, and it scrapes a whole bunch of different data sets and search engines, and that stuff is good. That right there is passive as well. You're not really doing the brute forcing thing. You're not raising any alarms at the DNS level. So I would suggest that you guys check out the Sublister application. Look at the modules. Look at what they're scraping, and you can do that stuff manually or write your own framework for this. But there are other data sets that I look at. Some of the stuff that I'm looking at really is going into projects that I'll be releasing at some point to GitHub so other people could actually use this stuff. I'll definitely go into more detail there as to what data sets we're using. But it pretty much incorporates all of this stuff. Another data set that I find interesting, even though it's dedicated specifically to Cloudflare, is the CrimeFlare database or data set. I'm not sure if you guys know what CrimeFlare is, but it's a website. It's been on for years. CrimeFlare exists for the sole purpose of identifying the IP addresses of rogue websites hosted on Cloudflare. Okay, that's why it's called CrimeFlare. I'm sure you guys know there's been a lot of rogue and malicious sites hosted on Cloudflare in the past. So what the CrimeFlare people are doing is they're going through like all this historical domain data. They're trying to identify the actual real IP address of these domains behind Cloudflare, and they put it into a database. And the database is kind of like just a CSV, very simple. So I wrote a tool to parse that. And what's cool about it is that it also gives you a date stamp for each domain and IP identification. And it also gives you other information like certificate details and other data that you could use for OSINT purposes. So I'll give you a great example. So let's say your personal website is behind Cloudflare. I want to get your IP address. I use the CrimeFlare database, and it gives me an old IP address of yours from like back in the days, like maybe a year ago. So now you would think, well, CrimeFlare database is really cool, but it's outdated. It's a year old. This IP address is no longer relevant. Well, get this. So now what I'll do is I'll take a look at that IP address, and I'll search that IP in that same data set, and I may find another domain you hosted, maybe your wife's domain. And it just so happens that she had moved her domain at some point within that year to use her and hosted behind Cloudflare. Bam, we have a discovery. So you put all that stuff together, the 4 data sets I just mentioned right now, and you have yourself a pretty decent passive asset discovery tool. It's just a matter of putting it all together.
Okay. Sounds good.
I'm sorry I'm poking your ear off.
No, that's cool. We've got all the links in the show notes to Sublister and to CrimeFlare, and we're definitely going to check all those out. So if you are interested in any of the stuff that's we're talking about here, you can reach out to our show notes. Sure. So. All right, so one of the other things you mentioned is discuss why brute forcing leaves a heavy footprint for blue team forensics. I would imagine that would be a good thing, though, because then you could tell who's actually making, you can set up, alerts, or like, Miss Amanda would set up alerts that, hey, these IP address ranges are, banging on, DNS.
I think it's just probably not good for the other side.
Somebody's washer and dryer is
that wants to be quiet.
Yeah, somebody's washer and dryer is causing a denial of service attack using DNS amplification.
Right.
Well, you're absolutely right. If blue teams were running their own DNS servers, then they would see just an influx of pretty much NX domain doesn't exist error messages.
Not always.
Not always, but
there's some really shitty DNS solutions out there.
Oh, you're absolutely right, and but I would say that hopefully, if everything's set up properly, you should be seeing these error messages coming in. It'll definitely help you in identifying when your domain is being brute forced, or even attacked through like some sort of weird cache poisoning attack or something. So, I would say that more websites or more domains, more infrastructure should probably take advantage, especially if they're running their own DNS. Unfortunately, for sites like Cloudflare and and this is not Cloudflare specific, obviously. This is for any cloud-hosted DNS service. These services are not usually using, or they're not really monitoring their DNS error codes or DNS error logs, because of course you can imagine, especially if Cloudflare is massive, they're hosting, a million websites or something. You can imagine what those logs look like.
Yep.
But of course, it's a missed opportunity. It's a missed opportunity because you would never know if your site is being scanned or brute forced via DNS. You have no idea if someone's looking for just an external dev server, and and they actually end up finding it.
Yep.
There's no idea at all. So that's really what I meant in the notes about DNS error messages and error logging, and how it can become useful for blue teams and how it's a problem for cloud-hosted DNS providers.
Okay. So for blue teamer, if they have this heavy footprint for forensics, is there anything specific they should be looking for in the DNS logs that they could filter on that would give them, a good idea of what's going on without a heavy, a lot of space? Like if they're using Splunk or they're using a free Splunk, they only have 500 megs a day. So is there some kind of, something they could, zero in on that would give them an idea that, hey, somebody's banging on our DNS quite a bit, or hey, we're getting, a lot of DNS lookups, from inside. So that may be because, we've been hosed up by ransomware or by Trojan or rat.
Sure. I mean, I would say that I look at it from different sides, different sides of the coin. I'm trying to think of, I'm the kind of person I like to think outside the box. So I would say that, and I'm sure there are much more clever people with much better ideas. I would say that one idea would be to look at the common DNS brute force lists that are out there. And, download sublister, download subroot, look at the DNS list, word list rather, and look at host names that are unique to the applications. They do exist. I've seen weird host names inside of sublisters, word list, that I'm not really sure where they got it from. I can't really tell you from the top of my head, but that would be a great indicator that someone is scanning for this weird subdomain that we know exists in a sublister's DNS word list. Mm-hmm. Another direction might be on detecting the speed of the DNS request. So we know that subroot and sublister, they have a default thread list, a thread count of 16 threads per queue or whatever. So we know there's going to be at least 16 DNS requests per, how fast your connection can handle. So maybe maybe identifying the speed in which these DNS error messages are coming up. That might be an indicator as well. I don't think it's foolproof, but I think it could help. Mm-hmm. And that's just a couple ideas I can just throw off the top of my head that would help, the DevOps teams or security teams try to put together some sort of identifier for this kind of stuff.
Could you also look at, because I was just thinking of this. So a lot of domain names are like dictionary words. Could you be looking for, stuff that doesn't necessarily, equal a dictionary word? Domain generating algorithms that I heard about from Chip Sweeney over at OpenDNS at a talk he gave. They're big, long pieces of gibberish that don't make any sense. So would that be something that you could also filter for? Would that make sense?
Absolutely. No, you're 100% correct. There's actually a really cool paper that came out many years ago fantastic read on how to use like Markov chains to create these weird DNS brute forcing system. And there's actually a proof of concept on GitHub written in Perl. I mean, we're talking about like a 6-year-old project. And I'm gonna see if I could get you the link for that. But just reading through it and seeing the stuff that's coming out there, I think you would be able to identify because there are going to be weird DNS requests that are going to come in, long host names, weird strings that just do not make any sense and probably are not on anyone's word list. But if you have an understanding of how these generators are coming up with these names, you will be able to kind of figure it out, identify it. Let me see if I can find you that while
Okay.
I'm here.
Okay. So while we're sitting here, so we can talk some more about that at another time. We can do the Markov, find the Markov chain GitHub thing. I wanted to move along to a question that I had because I got an email from a guy. He said that his company just went through a phishing campaign, and his C-level people finally said, "Hey, run your phishing campaign. We want to see how poorly we're doing or how well we're doing." And he said he sent out a couple of hundred emails and came back with he targeted his sales department, and he got about anywhere between 30 to 40% of his sales department had clicked on the email. And his question was, and because some of the replies he got back from them was that they were unhappy with him, that it was kind of like he felt that they felt he didn't trust them, and that I just wondered and both Amanda, who does MSSP work, I didn't know if she ever gets involved with doing phishing campaigns, or you must get hit for doing phishing campaigns or do phishing yourself, Hector, from time to time. Does that breed internal mistrust, and how do we get over that? How do we convince people that doing these things on the reg is good? Because it seems to me that this poor bastard who did it is kind of the goat right now, because he's kind of feeling the heat from his actual coworkers. So now if he goes and asks them to do something, he'd be like, "Oh yeah, you're the guy that you made me have to take more training." So how do we get over that?
I thought it was just me. I had that problem when I did it too, and really? I thought it was just the person, because it was one of those people, like we would send it out 200 to 400 people at a time. It was a company of like 2,000, and one of the people came back and said, I'll never trust anything you say again because you're trying to con me into doing all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. I thought it was just a lady, because she was one of those people that always called the help desk complaining about something. I think for the most part, though, we got positive responses or no responses at all. But I don't know. Maybe it's the way you word things, or maybe it's your corporate culture. I mean, I think a lot of things could probably play into the people's reactions.
Yeah. So Hector, how about you? You must have companies who come in and go, "Yeah, we want you to fish the heck out of our people." I mean, obviously you may not see the fallout from that, but I mean,
sure.
What happens when you go in and go, "Well, we send out this to everybody, and we have like 50% people," and then I mean, what happens when you're doing something like that?
Well, I would say that there's usually a lot of shock and surprise at how successful we have been on these social engineering campaigns, and I think that, and this is actually a very good point. I'm glad you brought this up. This is a conversation that I've brought up in the past with my colleague Benjamin Caldwell, talking about, 180, 250 people, 300 people just submitted their credentials. What's going to happen? I hope they don't get fired. That's pretty serious. And it's pretty much just, going back to the drawing board. There's got to be education. It's something you and I talked about a lot in the last podcast, Brian, about the education, talking to your colleagues and employees, letting them know that, look, at the end of the day, this was not personal. This has nothing to do with you. This has to do with our business, our attack surface. You have to know how vulnerable we are. So if I'm sending you, or if I'm managing a phishing campaign and it targets you and you submit a credential, again, it's not for you to take it personal, but we need to address this.
Yeah.
And we need to talk about it. And just go through the payload and try to understand what exactly made them feel comfortable enough to click on that link, submit a credential, and just walk away without reporting it. Because that's one thing that I'm noticing, that people are submitting credentials to us, and we do our best to replicate the environment. We're using domain permutations, and we're just like we're really hardcore about what we're doing. So I can understand why they would fall for it. But now what's difficult is what was difficult to understand is after they submit a credential and nothing happens, they get redirected back to the real URL, and they log into the CMS, or they log into the email, and they don't see anything about the email we just sent them. That should be an indicator. Why aren't they reporting this?
Yeah.
And that's more of my concern, and I think that's the companies that we have been communicating with, especially recently, that's been their concern as well. So it becomes complicated, Brian, and social engineering is a psychological thing. I mean, it really is. It's our human nature to want to help and want to respond, and we want to be quick. There's a little bit of urgency. All you have to do is apply a little bit of urgency to one payload, and you're going to have a success rate of anywhere between 30 and 50%. I mean, I've seen some crazy numbers.
Yeah.
So
do you think a company that wants to do a phishing campaign, the security people in the company would be like, yes, let's do a phishing campaign because, it validates security people, because somebody's going to click on the link. So we know that there's going to be a phishing problem because we know people are going to click on the link. So why do we do these phishing campaigns? Because I hear on other podcasts that I listen to, they're like, oh yeah, you can train people all you want, but they'll still click on the link. Why do we still do these phishing campaigns? Is it so that we can go, haha, security told you, C-levels, that we need to do X, Y, and Z? Because, will this either justify a better email, tar pitting program like Proofpoint or something like that? Or, all we're doing is making people now take training for something that they're going to do again and again and again.
Well, it may seem like that, but I guarantee you that if I do an engagement and we're looking at, 300 credentials in one engagement, and then we do the same engagement, a couple months later, I'm almost willing to wager that number is going to drop. It's not going to be substantial. It may be, instead of 50%, it may be 35%. But this is an ongoing thing. Security is not perfect, both technological and human. We have to continue to work together and figure out the best way to secure our environment and secure our infrastructure. So, I don't see it as, justifying the security department. I mean, I think the security department is important, but this is really about your company. At the end of the day, we all work together. We need the job. We need this money. And if this company gets compromised and we lose our intellectual property, guess what? That job is gone. So I definitely would agree that talking about anti-phishing or phishing recognition or any of this the different kind of trainings that are out there, it may become annoying because you hear it 1,000 times a day, but phishing is still successful. But unfortunately, we just got to continue. We have to keep moving forward. And one other thing I want to add to it, to this point, I also believe that the IT teams, security departments, DevOps, they also need to include a little bit of okay. You mentioned Proofpoint. You mentioned, there are a lot of decent products out there. Even implementing something as simple as Proofpoint or DNS categorization, you're really going to help your employees out. I guess my point is your security team should try to also help out the humans behind the computers, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Try to implement something that's going to help the process. Because if you're leaving your employees or your colleagues exposed directly to phishers, then you are still going to, regardless of training, you're still going to see some sort of compromise.
Yeah.
So I hope I made my point clear. But yeah.
Oh yeah. Like I mean, you're spot on. I think some people worry about phishing, you know, and user education and stuff way too early in the process when they have half of the other part of the environment on fire.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there's no outbound filtering, there's no mail filtering, there's no endpoint protection, there's you know, no segmentation, whatever. And they're like, oh well, we still need to train our users. Well, I think, you know, you have to worry about that other stuff before you get to, you know, a lot of people don't see it as being that advanced, but you have to have, you know, a fairly secure environment, I think, to get to that point.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And,
you're absolutely right.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is, if you're going to do a phishing campaign, you also have to have a way for which people can report phishing, either the fake fish that you just sent out, or, you know, if somebody actually gets the, hey, like the one that just happened recently with the Google Drive thing, you know, that got everybody for some unknown reason. There has to be a way for you to be able to report, you know, maybe you have a phishing at, you know, company.com email or something that goes directly to the security office and, you know, lets the security people know, because as we've said numerous times on the show, at some point, your people are your first line of defense. They're going to be the ones, especially if somebody has made a good enough fish that gets around your email filters, and that happens, and it does happen.
That's easy, sure.
Yeah, exactly. And so you need to have that line of defense, and if they don't know where to send that email to, they're going to just delete it, and that's not going to be a win for security, because they're not going to have that early detection that they can use to go back to the email people and go, hey, you need to scrub this email. It's definitely a fish, and we don't want 800 other people clicking on it and harvesting credentials.
That's actually what we stressed in our education. Like we stress reporting over anything, because you know, it's not their job to know what's legitimate and what's not, or what I mean, it's great if you add that to your phishing and half of the people get it, but the other people that aren't super bright aren't going to get it. And, you know, the fact that they know where they can, you know, say, hey, I put my credentials in here, I need you to check to make sure it's okay, or this is acting weird.
Exactly.
They know they're not going to get screamed at when they call or email or whatever.
Yep.
I think that's more important probably than anything.
Yep.
Absolutely.
All right. So the other thing that I did not know about Mr. Hector that he told me about in the Google Doc here is that you're on a TV show.
What?
Oh yeah.
Not Scorpion though. You're on Scorpion, right? No, I'm just kidding.
No. Please don't disrespect me like that. Come on, bro. It's crazy.
Okay. So
CSI
Cyber. That's what it was. That's right. I forgot.
No. Neither. No, I'm on like a crime show. It's called Outlaw Tech. You can find it on the Science Channel like Wednesdays at 10 p.m.
Yeah.
It's part of like the Discovery Network.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's like you know, I'm sure you guys have seen other similar shows where you have like How They Almost Got Away, you know, stuff like that, and you have experts discuss how these people were able to get away, or how they committed the crime, or how the crime actually took place. What we're actually doing is we're going a step further. We're actually talking about the technology behind it. And when I say technology, I don't necessarily mean like high tech, like somebody used 0 days to hack into something. It's more like just the ingenuity of some of these people that they were able to do these amazing things with even low tech, techniques. So you have people like myself, and you have like ex law enforcement individuals, and you have security experts. You have some amazing people there that are on the show. I'm actually glad to be a part of the roster.
Mm-hmm.
That's
pretty fun show. The format is cool. I mean, and I'm wearing suspenders. I bought it old school, so I bought it back.
That's great.
So
okay, I have to ask. I have to ask though, do you have any like cheesy reenactments?
No, well,
Ah.
there are some reenactments, but it's not super cheesy. It's not that bad. It's not like super bad. I think
Those are
that
my favorite part. Like obviously
Hector wearing a hoodie, leaning over a keyboard with his gloves on and his sunglasses, and yeah.
Oh yeah, there's stuff like that, but it's pretty fun. I think the format is cool. I think the production company involved in Science really did an amazing job. Like I was scared. I was like, man, huh?
They usually seem to do a good job. That channel does.
Oh yeah, Science Channel is like they're doing it up, man. They're really doing good stuff. I was like, damn, they're gonna make me look like a gargoyle. I'm gonna be on TV looking like a weirdo. But to be honest, I was all right. I was happy with it. Yeah.
So how did they reach out to you for this? I mean, did they hit you up on Twitter and go, "Hey, come on our show"? Because this isn't the first type of show that does discussing about hacking. There was a show, I want to say it's on like the National Geographic Channel or something, but Mr. J Street was on it and a couple of other people, and they were talking about hacking stuff too. They were like robbing a bank or something. I don't know. That show may still be on as well, but what is it about the these are definitely not the shows like CSI Cyber and Scorpion and all those where they really just turn hacking into crap. What's the appeal to shows like these?
Well, first and foremost, I've been reached out by a lot of people to do different projects, and just like what you said right now, I don't want to be on something like that. That's going to be like really cheesy and whatever. So they approached me by email. Actually, they sent me an email to my public contact email, my Twitter account at HXMonSecure, and they were like, "Hey, listen, we're really digging your story. We saw the article in Wired. We're glad that you're like doing good stuff now. We'd like to participate in this really cool project. Here's some promo materials. Let us know what you think. You got 24 hours to decide." Some crazy, like, it was really cool. Like, it was a really cool experience. I got to speak to the lady on the phone. She was a fantastic, fantastic lady. And she said, "Yeah, dude, we would love to have you on and get your perspective." So that's how it pretty much turned out.
All right. So you're like a regular for this? I mean, do they talk about something every week?
Oh yeah, I'm on the whole season. Like I'm on the show.
Oh,
you can see me every Wednesday or whatever. You can see me there looking goofy on TV. It looks great.
So you got an IMDb credit and everything, huh?
Well, I don't know if they added it yet, but yeah, I guess so. That's pretty cool. I'm happy. I have some other projects lined up. There's some other cool things going on, and I'll tell you guys about that when it's time to go live. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. It's a fun show. I think one of the coolest things about it, though, the first episode was about like social engineering, actually. Mm-hmm. Which is funny and kind of ironic here because that's pretty much what we've been talking about for the last half an hour. And there was a case about a guy. You remember right before the housing crash, the housing market crash. These companies were giving out mortgages left and right. Mm-hmm. Well, there was a guy that figured out, there's so much money flying around. How can I grab that? How can I get access to these mortgages? How can I get access to these checks, rather? And so, like, he just used Spoof Card. He downloaded Spoof Card, and he just started calling random people. And he started, following people in they were driving around nice cars, or he would follow people from like nice neighborhoods, and he would just find their contact information, call them up, pretend to be the bank, grab the login details, and transfer the money out. The guy was a real, POS. He was a real crappy person for doing that because it screwed over a lot of people. But what's cool about it is that we also got to discuss how he was discovered, and like any person, even I, back in the days when I was a former black hat at one point in my life, we all make operation security errors. The OPSEC is, in fact, I think that someone made a good tweet in my timeline today, and they, I forgot the name, but he was basically like, the best OPSEC advice is just the STFU, basically. Mm-hmm. And that's really it. But in this case, this guy, he was using burner phones all day, every day. He had like 100 of them. The feds were trying to get him, and then he reused one of the burner phones. And it just so happens that while the feds were tapping that phone, he was calling the local pharmacy to get like STD medication, and that's it. Bam, he's done. And that's how they caught him.
Wow.
So that's pretty much the way I'm breaking things down. Here's how the crime happened. Here's how they were caught, and here's how you can protect yourself. So
very nice, very nice,
very cool.
So you don't have the guy with the weird hair that says aliens. I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens.
That's the
well,
history.
I mean, maybe for next season, I'll wear a wig and I'll play that guy.
There you go. There you go. That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Well, there was one or two news stories that I wanted to discuss, and actually, you wanted to discuss one too. You wanted to talk about the one login and DocuSign breaches, and then we have one about an EMR that Miss Amanda has near to dear in her heart that we should discuss as well. So, what was it about the one login and the DocuSign breaches that really bothered you?
Well, the DocuSign breach. I'll start with the second one. The DocuSign breach really hit close to home because, I'm one of those paranoid people that I use one new email address per service. Mm-hmm. So, and I may have used DocuSign like a year and a half ago or something. And lo and behold, I get this random phishing email to this random email address that I've never used, haven't used in a year and a half. And I'm stumped. I'm like, okay, so what's going on here? This has to be evidence that, maybe DocuSign was breached. And so I had this full-blown conversation with my colleague, Dwight, just talking about the possibility that this was in fact true. And so we had this 2-hour-long conversation. We're talking about it. We're doing research. We're looking at the endpoint. We started reverse engineering the actual malware sample. And then, we start seeing people on Twitter tweeting it. We start seeing people, journalists writing about beware of the DocuSign phishing campaign that's going on. And I believe the next day, the day after, DocuSign made a statement. And yes, in fact, they were compromised. But don't worry about it. It's only a small data set. They can't access any of your encrypted documents. I'm glad that I didn't use it for anything important. Mm-hmm. But it definitely hit close to home. And that was the first phishing campaign that I was actually targeted in where, of course, it always takes you by surprise when something like that happens. It was good for me because I got to burn an hour or two playing with it, but it just goes to show you that. And let me tell you, I know DocuSign has security teams. They're they have, they're pretty much set up as much as one could imagine, security wise. From what I heard anyway. Yeah. So this kind of breach is very telling about the how sensitive our security is in general. How open some of these very secure organizations can be. Yep. And of course, I'm very curious as to how these guys got these emails in the first place. So those are my thoughts. They're just random. They're all over the place. But I thought it was an important breach, even though it didn't really get that much press. People are not really talking about it much. But I figured, we should talk about it. So
yeah. Now, the DocuSign thing bothered me because when we signed up for our house 3 years ago, we didn't have to, print out a whole ton of documents and FedEx them and do whatever. The realtor was like, we'll just use DocuSign. And I'm like,
yep.
Okay.
Me too.
And, they're like, you fill out, you can just make this fake email signature and you can just, everywhere you're supposed to click, you click and it'll sign it for you. And I'm like, has anybody tested the security of this? Because it made me feel weird. And then the wife was like, shut up, sign this. I was like, all right, fine.
Sure.
So, I don't know what exactly they got a hold of. If they got a hold of a digital signature that looks like mine, if they got hold of my mortgage payments, which gives basically every piece of information about me short of, fingerprints, which I think I may even had to have a fingerprint. But, it's amazing the amount of information that is stored in, a DocuSign environment or, a healthcare environment or something. And these industries just don't appear to take security seriously, because it's like
Sure.
they don't I don't know if it's they don't care, it's just they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
So
Well, I mean, that's the problem with the cloud.
yeah.
And I remember when the cloud was the big buzzword, many years ago.
Yeah.
And it was a time when I was working for a big organization, and the CEO was like, the cloud this, the cloud that. I said, well, security-wise, I think we should keep everything internally, because hosting our intellectual property in the cloud, now you're trusting someone else with our IP.
Yeah.
And, in general, I'm very paranoid. I think I would be fantastic on someone's like security team, like a company, internal security or whatever. Yeah, it definitely does bother me. And that's, DocuSign, again, is used for sensitive documents. So it definitely really caught my attention when I saw that email come in. And I think it's something to be aware of. I mean, I think at this point we all know that there is absolutely no 100% secure environment. But it was definitely just an eye-opening experience. But the same applies to OneLogin. OneLogin is another service that people rely on, and it's a password manager and all that good stuff. We were actually writing a series of blogs on AWS and S3 security. You can go to rhinosecurity.labs.com, just check out our blog, and you're going to see some of the series that we posted, some of the blog posts rather. And we were discussing these exact issues. So when we found out that OneLogin, they had like the S3 API key somewhere, and someone accessed it and they just had full control of OneLogin, that's pretty scary.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So,
well, it's amazing how poorly because the email they got, or the article I saw on June 1st, they've had some updates since then, but they said basically you got to generate new certs for all your SSO stuff, generate new keys for your legacy API, generate new directory tokens. I mean, there isn't much that they're not telling you to not do. So I mean, they were pretty much, if you follow the list that Nerdy Beard put out on 31st of May, they were completely owned up, down, left, and right. A B start.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's it's pretty nasty. I mean, and according to this, they did get there was some decrypted data inside there, and the information they got also would allow them to decrypt the encrypted data. So.
Unbelievable.
It's crazy the amount of data that they were allowed to get access to. They said 7 hours they would have been able to decrypt the customer data. So they rifled through for
7 hours is a long time.
Yeah, they had 7 hours inside the network before they were discovered, and that was enough time to decrypt the customer data. So,
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's awful. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The sad thing is though,
look,
they're still in business. I mean, for good or
ill. Look, that's very scary to me. Like, this is why I don't use a cloud password manager. I do use password managers that are local, and that's as far as I'll take it. And even then, I'll disconnect my USB drive, or I disconnect I'll disconnect what I need to disconnect so that people cannot access it. God forbid someone gets into my systems. So I would say that just a forewarning for your listeners. There are a lot of great password managers out there, cloud servers. I'm not going to take away from them, but definitely think about using a local password manager. It helps in minimizing your risk. So,
and also don't use the browser integration, because Tavis, Mr. Tavis Ormandy found a lot of good vulnerabilities in those integration packages there. So,
yep.
Oh yeah.
Yep. So one last thing before we go, one that I found that's near and dear to my heart, because I spent a little time doing healthcare, consultants work for hospitals, and that's why I'm scared of hospitals doing stuff now. Because
I will only go to the one, because I worked there for 7 years and I know exactly what's going on.
You know exactly where their skeletons are hidden. So
yeah.
So on May 31st, a company called eClinicalWorks had to pay a $155 million fine because they basically falsified test data in an effort to become accredited. and this is they were in Massachusetts, and they have to pay $155 million to settle a false claims lawsuit. Much how back in the day with the emissions tests with Volkswagen, they
Oh yeah.
So to
I guess though the email they sent out to customers wasn't denying they had done it, but it also wasn't confirming the claims.
Well, they paid the fine. They paid the fine, and the idea was they didn't have to admit guilt. So
right.
As part of the settlement, they don't have to admit any liability. What I found interesting about the whole thing was that the fine is going to be paid not by the company, but by the CEO, like the CTO, or the COO, the CMO, and like some developer and a couple of the product managers, which I found very interesting because that never happens when you hear about with fines.
They were probably all in it together and thought, hey, we're going to get fucked over way more if we don't just shut up and pay this out of our own pockets.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's a good strategy. I know I read the article, but did it say where the charges came from? Was that like the FTC or the Attorney General or something?
It was the Office of Civil Rights, the Health and Human Services Office of the Inspector General. Look at that. Yep. So they falsely certified its EMR or EHR software met all the government criteria. And the criteria was like, you have to test against these 16 codes. And they were saying, oh yeah, we pulled from this gigantic database and whatever. All he did was hard code the 16 codes into the program. And then when they ran their tests, it showed up as meeting all their government criteria. So they I
am not surprised.
Really? Why not?
No, so I worked directly with that software for years.
Really?
Yeah. Like when I first, I was in the help desk forever, right? Well, not forever. So like I worked in ISP in the help desk for 2 years. And then when I switched and went to the hospital, I worked in the help desk there for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And then when I got some certifications and blah, 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 there weren't any openings in our networking group yet. So they kind of made a position for me that was like a physician liaison that would work in between the networking group and the software vendor, and the software vendor was eClinicalWorks. Mm-hmm. So I would, help the doctors use it and, troubleshoot slowness and that kind of crap. And, over the next 2 years, 1.5, 2 years, I worked only with that software.
Yeah.
And I went out to Boston and had got eClinicalWorks certified, and some of the nightmares in that software for other software, is around the same because they all suck. Yeah. But for example, they across the board, because they have all of their support in India, the username and password for all of their Apache Tomcat databases was Tomcat, and that's what the service ran as. And it was, we fought tooth and nail to get that changed for our instance, because you can either have it host with most MSSPs, you can have it hosted with them, or you can have it hosted internally. And we were one of the few people in the country that actually hosted our own database. Mm-hmm. And other things happened too. So we had, you never knew who their support was. So you couldn't give them 2-factor auth because, there were 10,000 of them working in their support centers. Yep. We had a support person dial in at some point and DC promo one of our application servers. And boom, we ended up with a surprise domain controller on that domain. Yeah. So little stuff like that, right?
So that sounds like a pen tester's heaven, default creds.
Yeah.
Really crappy UI.
The great thing, and actually the UI wasn't too bad.
Oh wow.
That's the flashy part that they sell the doctors.
Oh, okay.
And then one of the pain points that I always stick to, and I had a boss that I had a kind of a fight over this with, is the company that had that software was our sister company. Mm-hmm. And they were on a different domain. Now, I was told that we were not responsible for the security of that, even though we were the ones that managed everything, and that we were still PCI compliant on our end, right, on the hospital's end. However, there was a a two-way transit of trust in between our domain and theirs.
Oh.
And they were still telling me that didn't matter because it was a security boundary.
Oh my goodness.
And I had fight after fight after fight over that and proved my point several different ways before I ended up leaving eventually. But
I would imagine you'd had to have.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that got me was they spent almost $400,000 to influence influential customers to recommend eClinicalWorks products to prospective other customers and kickbacks in the form of consulting and speaker fees. So they basically reached out to the Gartners of the world and said, hey, here's some money, tell people we're the best. And of course the bobblehead said, yes, they are the best. They are the best. And I find that there should have been some fines levied against those folks too for not doing due diligence to at least check out the product, because it sounds like they got there's some corruption there that I think needed to be investigated, but I don't see that anywhere here in this document. So it's fairly shady. I mean, the Volkswagen folks paid billions of dollars and had to buy back a bunch of cars, and they got $155 million from the CEO and COO to, I mean, and it sounds like they can afford it, so they're still in business. That sucks, though. I mean, what about hospitals that have this stuff? And by the way, if you do have eClinicalWorks, go change your Tomcat passwords on your application, because I'm guaranteeing that you aren't doing that, and it's probably still set to defaults. So, I mean, what about the hospitals that are stuck using this stuff? This is like I don't know, like buying Oracle for some companies. It's a major purchase. And it's a major move to this software from whatever it is they were using before. Maybe they didn't have.
It's extremely expensive and extremely time consuming.
Yeah. And now you've got this kind of issue. Stuck. I mean, what do you do?
Hold their feet to the fire, and sometimes it still doesn't help.
Yeah. I could assume, I guess they assumed liability, or they didn't assume liability, obviously. So, I mean, they got to fix it somehow, right?
I don't know. or in whatever implementation they're going to test next for HHS, prove that they fixed it in.
Hector, if Rhino Sec ever comes to a hospital and they're running eClinicalWorks, you can just, silently chuckle and go tee-hee-hee and, own them up left and right.
Super easy.
Yeah.
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 I actually accidentally almost deleted the entire database once, but we won't go into that.
Oh my goodness!
It was my SQL running on Windows.
Oh god! Oh my god! That sounds awful. Is it Windows XP at least?
No, 2008 R2.
Oh well, okay, that's not awful. I guess.
No, we had a good hardware setup, an infrastructure setup, but yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
So, Hector, it's getting late, I know, for you on the East Coast there, and Miss Amanda's on the East Coast as well. So, we'd love to have you back on. So, if you ever,
sure.
If you've got other thoughts or questions or, ideas about news stories, I'd love to pick your brain about the Equation Group and all the hacking stuff there with the CIA and WikiLeaks. But I think we're already out of time. So, and I'm sure you do have great opinions about that. I'd love to hear them. But
definitely. Next time we could touch on that.
Yes. Well, yes. So, are you going to be speaking anywhere? Are you going to be attending any cons in the near future?
I am actually I'm attending ISACA conference in Washington D.C. in October. I'm going to do that over there. It's going to be fun.
Awesome.
Just going to talk about my experiences, and then that shifts between just, I guess, really talking about my alternate perspective, I guess, as a former Black Cat.
Mm-hmm.
Just trying to talk to the audience about how that actually applies and how it could be beneficial to their organizations to really think outside the box. Sometimes you gotta, even if you have your own security team, always look for outside opinions, look for other pen testing groups or red team organizations, and just try to get an outside perspective. So I really want to talk about that, and then also the educational part. I want to talk about what I learned through the course of the last 20 years, from the 90s to now, and my thoughts on the security industry. So it'll be cool. And that's pretty much what I'm doing. Coming up. That is the next speech, but more than likely I'll just be focusing on just working on security research at Rhino and just kicking ass. That's what I'm right now. Life is good. I can't complain.
Awesome. So if people wanted to get a hold of you outside of the ISACA conference in DC, or maybe they wanted to hit you up and ask you some more questions, how would they go about reaching you?
Well, I'm on Twitter. My Twitter handle is at hxmonseeger. Or you could just hit me up on my email, hxm.public@gmail.com, and just by all means, send me questions, whatever, concerns. I'm pretty open. I'm a cool guy. You can talk about whatever you want. Right on. So, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're
Any
you're
questions
getting out.
I got you.
I'm glad you're getting out. The last time, like we said, when we talked to you, you were still a little leery about joining the larger InfoSec community. So it's awesome that you're getting out. Would you be going to anything like DerbyCon or anything like that?
Say that again?
Would you be up for doing something like DerbyCon or like ShmooCon next year? It's in DC.
Sure,
as well.
Absolutely. Well, I know last year, you made a very generous offer, for me to come down and hang out with you guys and check the conferences out. And, I definitely want to. I think that what I needed to do was just catch up on life and I've just been really working really hard. Like, my schedule is crazy, but I think that I'll have some time this year to definitely hit up the conferences and just meet with people and just talk. So,
okay.
I'll definitely be seeing you soon.
Awesome. So, Miss Amanda, you put this in the show notes. Is the CFP for Secure West Virginia going on?
It is. Yep. They just opened up that. And I blew off Bill's podcast to make this one instead.
Oh.
So I'm sure he's mad at me.
Well, you got to be exclusive. Okay. I don't think he listens to this. You got to be exclusive.
That's what I told him. I told him this one takes precedence.
That's right. I already found out you're on multiple Slack channels.
I know. Like,
where's the exclusivity here?
Now. Yeah.
So, wow, man. So speaking of training, we BreakSec is actually doing training. We did one with Matt on some Python stuff. So we did 6 weeks of Python. We asked Miss Sunny Ware, who has done some training on Pluralsight and Cybrary, to do some web application security training with us. And I did a dry run with her on Wednesday night, which is the 7th of June. We did this on the 8th of June. And it's going to be some fantastic training. So if you're interested in learning about burp and, taking a vulnerable VM and finding all the flags in it, with regard to like OWASP or, web application security, findings and learning how to do SQL injection and setting up your environment for proper testing, we're doing that. So if you go to our Patreon, which is at patreon.com/BDS_podcast, you can sign up at different levels on our training. So for $20, you can attend the training. And we'll give you a link, and it'll be a Zoom training, and Miss Sunny will be there for 3 sessions. If you can't make the training, for $9, you can get the videos immediately after the class is over. Otherwise, after the 3 classes are over, we'll put out the training for free, and you can get the videos then. You just won't have the benefit of asking questions in class and whatever. So, I mean, if you're interested in learning and getting, 3 to 4 hours of training from Miss Sunny, go ahead and sign up. You can go to our show notes here, and there'll be links to that information in the show notes. So,
I'm gonna pimp my training too.
Well, yeah. What's your pimped out training? Did you get a Circle City Con thing?
No, I did not. No, I'm actually doing one that I just did yesterday. And we'll be doing again in August and October. is I'm doing a threat detection 3-hour training with Lee through Safari Online.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was super nervous when I did it yesterday because I had never actually given a training before, but the responses were amazing.
Okay.
We had like 300 people show up. Well, sorry, 300 people sign up, not as many show up. But I guess that's normal. And then I just found out today I had submitted to the O'Reilly Security Conference, just like a regular talk. And then they asked me if I wanted to do a 3-hour workshop instead.
Very nice.
So I guess I'm going to be doing that.
Wow. Okay. Hey, Hector,
awesome.
would you ever think about doing some training? Like training people?
I think that'd be. Yeah, I think that would be really cool. I think that it'll be beneficial for both sides. I would love to try it out, and in fact, I'm doing a little speech / training tomorrow at a nonprofit out here in New York. So I've been practicing. So yeah, maybe one day I have to pick your brain on that and see how that works.
Don't tempt me. I will definitely reach out to you.
We will.
By all means.
I have nothing to lose and everything to gain. So yeah, we could do something on pen testing, or we do something on red teaming. I would love to maybe pick your brain on that. We'll talk later. Let's finish the show. So
Yes.
Mr. Betcher's out this week, but he was greatly missed. We had to we had a hole in our podcast heart here, and we had to fill it with Hector. So. You can find Mr. Betcher on Twitter at BetcherPwned, BOETTCHERPWNED. He also is the lead and Uber developer of LogMD, which is an application that helps you analyze Windows logs. And you can find that at log-md.com. God, I hope that's right.
It is.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah. And so you can reach out to him. He's always good times, and he'll definitely talk your ear off with regards to logging and such. So I'm at Brian Brake on Twitter, BRYANBRAKE. The official podcast is at BrakeSec, BRAKESEC. We have a Slack channel. I mentioned it a little bit earlier. So when you're doing the web app security training, we'll have a special channel called Web App Sec in our Slack channel. And you can join that and ask questions in between class sessions or during class, and we'll keep it up afterwards just to talk about basic web application security stuff. So if you got cross-site scripting talk or discussion or something, you can have that. Our Slack is going just crazy. I have it turned off now because people complain because of the notifications pop up. But we have over 400 people on our Slack channel.
Wow.
It's very active. We have a lot of people on there from various walks of life, from new people, security, people interested in security, working in IT, malware researchers, MSSP people like Miss Amanda there, and myself, who is I don't know what I do. I'm the moderator and the guy who says,
I don't know what you do either.
I say take it to random.
I'm still trying.
I say take
Still
it to
trying
random.
to figure it out.
That's right.
Yeah, you're right. You yell at us when we veer way off topic.
You kids, take it to random. It's not about InfoSec. Yeah. So if you're interested in joining that and you want to talk about, Hector or the podcast or any of the other podcasts, or you just want to pick somebody's brain or have a bank of knowledge to pull from, because we talk about a lot of stuff in InfoSec. You can sign up at https://breaksec.signup.team. I even sent an invite to Hector before the show started, so maybe he'll
Awesome.
join it, and you can talk to him about hacking and phishing, and maybe you can ask him some questions about his former life. If he'll answer those, that'll be cool.
Sure.
Yeah, so we're pretty much everywhere. We're on iTunes. If you like it, please hit us up on iTunes. I mentioned the Patreon earlier. If you found value in this podcast, if you could float us a couple of bucks, even if you're not going to attend the class, we still, $1 would be great. That's always helpful for us to pay for our Zoom that we use every month, or to advertise. We host on Libsyn, so that costs money too. So. We're on iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud. We're on YouTube. We've got a YouTube channel, so if there's plenty of places for you to find us. We're on iHeartRadio. We're on TuneIn Radio app. There's, like I said, not you've tried very hard to not find us. So, any other thoughts or last thoughts from anybody?
I would say, just stay strong, stay safe, and find some time to disconnect, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, try to enjoy your lives.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wait, there's an outside?
I went camping the other day. It's out there.
Outside?
Yes.
Outside? Oh, wow.
Yes.
That's
the big
great.
ball of light in the sky was awful. I didn't know what was going on. So, I don't do a lot of plugging things, but if you're looking for, penetration testing, or you're looking for somebody to do phishing campaigns, or, you just want to, get some information from people, Rhino Sec Labs is available. There's a link in the show notes, or you can go to, rhinosecurity.labs.com.
Yes, sir. And I appreciate that. It's very cool of you.
Yeah, no, that's cool. We, you're a friend of the show, so we try to do what we can. So,
all right.
That was it for this week on Breaking Down Security. Have a great week. Be safe, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
All right. Take care.